With transformation of sentences part 2. Well, I have explained some of the aspects of transformation in my previous videos. So if you haven't watched, please do watch. And yes, if you like my video, please like, share and subscribe. And click the bell button to get notification as soon as I update my channel with new insights. So let's start today's lesson where I will be dealing with number 1, remove to. Number 2, use of to. Number 3, use of hardly had. And number 4, use of in spite of and despite. So let's get started with transformation of sentences. Part 2. So first of all, we'll be dealing with remove to. TOO2. So let me give you an example here. You will often come across this type of statement in your ICSE question paper, English literature, English language. He is too old to play, where the instruction given will be remove to, TOO2. Now, as the instruction is remove to, you simply have to remove to. So, in place of to, you have to write so. In place of TOO, you have to write so. Now, you also have to remove this to, TO2. And in place of this to, you have to write 3 words. Now, let's see what are the 3 words. The first word would be that. The second word would be according to the subject, the pronoun used according to the subject. So here it's the pronoun he. And the third word would be cannot, could not, or would not according to the tense. So let's see what's the tense here. So is, that is, it is in present tense. So you have to use cannot. So in place of TO, you have to use 3 words. The first word would be that. The second word would be according to the subject, the pronoun used according to the subject. And the third word would be the word cannot, could not, and would not according to the tense. So if it is present tense, you have to use cannot. If it is past tense, you have to use could not. And often, if a statement indicates something that has to be done in future, we use would not. So now you only have to fill it up. See, let's fill it up. He is so old that he cannot play. So the rest you will just fill it or fill in the blanks. It's very, very simple. Now let me take another example. Example number 2. He is too poor to beg. Now the instruction given here is also remove to. So you simply have to remove this to, and in place of this to, you have to write so. Let's remove these two, and in place of these two you have to write three words. Number one, that. Number two, the pronoun he, and number three would be the word according to the tense. Now here I am using would not. So you might be wondering, why have I used would not? Because the tense here shows it should be cannot. Now let me come back and let's fill it up first. He is so poor that he would not beg. Right? Now see the next part. Too big. This part actually indicates future tense, something to be done in future. That is the reason why here we have used would not. We will not use cannot, but we will use would not. So the second part of the statement implies or indicates something to be done in future. You have to use would not. The next would be use to, T-O-O, to. So let me take an example here. He is so ill that he cannot move. The instruction given, use to. So now we are no longer going to remove to, we are going to use to. It's just the vice versa of what we have done in example number 1. So now here you have to remove so, and in place of so you have to write T-O-O, and in place of these three words, that he cannot, you have to remove these three words, and in place of these three words you have to write TO2. Now fill it up. He is too ill to move. It's so simple and so easy. Let's move on with another example. This book is so difficult that I cannot follow. The instruction again is use to. So what we have to do? We have to remove so. In place of so you have to write T-O-O-2. We have to remove that I cannot. In place of that I cannot, you have to write TO2. Now let's fill. This book is too difficult. Let's fill difficult to follow. Done. Now let's move on to the next one. Number 3. Hardly had. Use of hardly had. You have to use whenever you will start out a statement with hardly had. Let me give you an example here. As soon as the door opened, comma, the birds flew away. The instruction given, begin, hardly, or begin, hardly had. Even if the instruction given is hardly, you automatically have to use had after hardly. Now, where are we going to use when? Well, let's see that. So, you have to definitely remove as soon as, because you are going to begin it with hardly had according to the instruction. So, let's start with hardly had. Now, let's continue. The door opened. Now, have you seen the comma here? Now, in place of this comma, you have to write when. You have to write when. That's the rule. Hardly had the door opened when. Now, just copy the rest. The birds flew away. Okay, so all that you have to remember is hardly will follow had, and in place of comma you have to use when, just as you now the fourth one, that's in spite of and despite. Now, have you seen how I have written in spite? In spite is not written together. It's written in a space, spite. That is how we write in spite. Now, in spite will always have of, and despite will never have of. That is what you have to remember. Now, let's take an example. Despite being old, comma, he goes to walk. The instruction given, begin, in spite. Dot, dot, dot. So, you have to remove despite. In place of despite, you have to start out with in spite automatically of. In spite of. Now, just copy the rest. In spite of being old, comma, he goes to work. Now, use of despite. Let's take an example here. In spite of the cold weather, he went out. The instruction given, begin, despite. So, you have to just remove in spite of. In place of in spite of, you have to write despite only. You will never use of with despite. Now you have to copy the rest. Despite the cold weather, he went out. So I'll be highlighting few more rules of transformation in my next video. A gentle reminder, please share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day.